All right. Up next is Dana Hebreard, who is the director of the Aquinas College Advantage Center and Career Services. A lifelong learner, she continued her education at Western Michigan University, earning a PhD in educational leadership. Before Aquinas, she was a career counselor and director of academic advising at other higher ed institutions. In her current role, she teaches a career development class designed for upper class students and also advises both students and alumni on resumes, cover letter writing, job search strategies, interviewing skills, and other areas related to career exploration and development. She also teaches in the Master of Management program. Dana works with employers to develop recruitment strategies and to help broaden the scope of employment opportunities for Aquinas students. She's an active member of the advising communities in NACADA, the Global Community for Academic Advising, and also attends NACE and Association for Human Resource Management events to continuously learn how to better serve AQ students. Dana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Matt. I am honored to be here. I love your podcast. I have it saved on my library, so I'm super thrilled to be here.
Oh, no, that's good to hear. And it's great to have you on. I know we were chatting at the Cincinnati conference and we're like, we got to make this happen, not only to kind of get to know you better, but later on in this interview, we'll be talking a little bit about the Emerging Leaders program, because that is something that, because this is in January, applications are already being accepted. So I can't wait to talk about that too. But for listeners who want to get to know you, what's been your background in higher ed and academic advising?
Sure. Well, I actually thought when I was a kid that I would be Joan Esposito, NBC anchor in Chicago. I had in my mind broadcast journalism, follow in her footsteps, another Sicilian going into TV. So I went to Indiana University to the Ernie Pyle School of Journalism. And, that's where my career and academic advising insights really began, because I did 2 internships in broadcast journalism and I realized, heck, this is not kind of what I want to do the rest of my life. Really was at a flux. Went to go see Marcia Denham, who was the academic advisor for the School of Journalism back then. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I am a junior, going to be a senior, and I'm really confused. And was so impressed with how thoughtful, and she took the time to talk with me. Faculty that I asked those questions were like, okay, well, yeah, you're right. I always thought I saw you in education. That was actually a direct quote from one of my faculty members. And I thought, well, that would have been helpful to know freshman year, maybe.
Right.
Not now. I'm graduating next year. And then I talked to the dean of students, and I was really involved on the campus. I was in a lot of student organizations. And then I was told, well, why don't you do this? This is actually a career. And I said, well, what is this? And, higher ed and the whole sort of student affairs profession, I didn't realize there was so much at Indiana University. I mean, George Koo is from Indiana University, right? Involving colleges and learning a little bit about the work that we do outside of the classroom and how instrumental that is. And those were all the things I was hearing were things that resonated with me. I really like the one-on-one. I like creating opportunities for others to be successful. And so, yeah, I wanted a different experience, and I went on to Loyola University in Chicago, where I worked in residence life, and I worked at Northwestern University in their student union, and I got to learn a little bit about just the role that we play on a college campus, and that the work that we do and the importance and how that matters. And so I just fell in love with life in higher ed. And I know we've seen a lot of changes in higher ed these days, and we're sort of at a crossroads for higher ed, a whole different podcast. But I ended up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, because one of my coworkers at the time was like, oh, my Aunt Sharon went to Aquinas College and she loved it. And there's a director of student activities position. So when I graduated from grad school, I applied and I got the job. And I didn't think a person right out of grad school could take on such a role, but I did. And then I started teaching career classes at Aquinas, because I think one of the things, if you're a listener and you work in a small college, you wear a lot of hats, like a lot of hats. And I worked it into my schedule to start teaching some career and self-awareness courses, and that just fueled my passion for that area. And so I went into career counseling and then academic advising, and that's takes us to now.
Yeah, and it's nice, you're using the term passion because it's like you're doing what you love to do.
Yeah.
But I guess my question, going back to when your faculty member told you when you were junior, senior, I could have I definitely would have saw you in education. Let's say they told you this in your freshman year when you were already thinking, okay, broadcast, journalism. Do you think you probably would have thought about it more, or probably would have education, push it to the side because I already know what I'm focusing on thinking as a freshman?
I think it took those experiential learning opportunities to really sink it in, because when you hear something, it might not stick until you experience it yourself.
Right.
But I probably would have taken a class in the area and maybe explored that opportunity, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think I took a couple of classes. I took a lot of classes in my day that I feel like didn't really connect as far as journalism per se, but I loved them, right? I took, jazz, history of jazz music, or I took psychology classes, East Asian culture, because I stumbled onto a class I needed for a general education requirement. And all of those, I was a Spanish, I took Spanish. So I did East Asian culture was not connected to my language requirement, but I loved it all. And that's what I embrace about higher ed and liberal arts education as well. So I talk to students and I'm like, I still utilize some of those little tidbits that I've learned in classes that might not have fit into a category, a box, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, that is 100% true. And sometimes just the random class that you take, and then you can learn so much. Yeah, it reminds me when I took a criminal justice class after I graduated with my bachelor's degree. I didn't know what I wanted to do for my master's. So I was like, well, I'm at Cal State San Bernardino. We get a fee waiver for these classes. Let me take one. Took a criminal justice class. Little did I know, like, one of the things that criminal justice instructors said in that class was, with any rule or law, there's always an exception. And like that, I have taken with me into academic advising with any student situation or scenario that comes up. And this instructor ended up now as one of my best friends and is a assistant dean on campus that I connect with and learn from every day. So you never know who you're going to meet and what you're going to learn.
Yeah, what a great insight. I'm going to keep that one, because that's so true.
Yeah. It's never, in the catalog, it's always like, it's one way or the other, but there's so much gray area that we can help our students.
Yeah.
So you're at Aquinas College. To help listeners, how would you describe your institution?
Yeah. Well, Aquinas College in Grand Rapids, Michigan is an inclusive educational community rooted in the Catholic Dominican tradition. So that liberal arts, as I mentioned, curriculum, global perspective, we have a number of study away opportunities, and emphasis on career preparation is in the mission, and focus kind of on that leadership, service to others. The Dominican sisters are very much still a part of the campus, so you definitely feel that sort of social justice and the influences of their tenants on campus. And then the Advantage Center, that sort of experiential learning center, supports student research, career-related activities such as internships or career kind of curricular experiences, and kind of that strategic goal of aligning advising and career services and academic affairs to sort of effectively support students in their self-discovery.
Nice. And then you mentioned like career, and you're the director of the Advantage Center and Career Services. So can you tell us more? Because you were talking about some of the classes that you also teach, but can you tell us more about your role and what that all entails?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, lots of different hats. So,
Yeah.
so any day could look a little different. And especially for all of us, I would say, after the pandemic, I think we've all taken on, well, it's not after we're still in it, right? And
Right.
we're all just each day, strapping in. I used that phrase this morning in a one-on-one meeting. I'm like, I just buckle my seatbelt and strap in. Who knows what today will bring? So as of today, I teach that career development class designed for upper level students to advise them. It's sort of like a life after Aquinas boot camp, if you will. And that's how we promote it and tout it to students, that it's all of the things you really should be doing, but unless you're in a cohort, you don't often do, right? It's like weight loss. If you have a cohort of people that you go to the gym with, you're more likely to go. And so the students learn professional etiquette, financial literacy, LinkedIn, personal branding, all of those different things, but also just making sense of what your interests and your passions, what brings you joy, meaning, and purpose in life. So we talk a little bit about that as well. And we also put on events. So we have, career events, a couple of signature ones, like we're the Saints. So we have the Saint to Saint networking event where we connect alumni and students and get to practice their networking skills. And we also have, again, Take a Saint to Work, where we do a job shadowing experience. It's not necessarily in person these days. We've been doing it via Zoom. So technology has been a great influencer, I think, so we could continue to offer those same types of services. And then I have a lot of one-on-one appointments, right? I have one-on-one appointments with alumni or with students who are just looking for someone to help them sort of navigate their own journey.
Yeah. So definitely, yeah, like you're saying, any day could just be something different, whether you're meeting with someone who's starting out at the institution, someone that's about to graduate, someone that has already graduated, whether it's an appointment, then you have the workshops, you have the class. And with the class, do they receive units for this? And does it count towards like units for electives for graduation?
Yeah. Well, we have right now at Aquinas 1 credit that is required for graduation. It's our career and self-awareness course. And then the other courses that I mentioned, some majors might have an internship requirement, others have it as encouraged. And then the class that I was mentioning, that sort of life after Aquinas course, is an elective credit. So they're all, and we have classes in our program, in our career development area, that range from 1 to 3. Students could take up to 12 credit hours of internship class. We also have a course that's 3 credits on where we pair a student with a mentor from our Osher Lifelong Learning Institute that's on campus. And that's actually been phenomenal. It's the 3rd year now that we're doing that, and just looking at students and then having them paired with, individuals in that third half of their life. We call it Generation Swap. And so the whole class is centered around that mentor pairing. So we do a lot of those little things. We also work with faculty and connect them, whether it's working with how do they incorporate those engaged learning opportunities in the classroom or in their class. We do a lot of workshops go into other faculty's classes to do presentations. So definitely a great group that I work with, and we have fun doing it.
Awesome. And you mentioned mentor pairing, and we'll be talking a little bit about that within NACADA. But with with your advice, generally speaking, advisors sometimes, when we try to navigate helping students with maybe going to career services or their career center, we don't know much, and we're always looking for how can we also give some information to our students. So do you have any advice to help advisors, like when students first start at an institution? A lot of times we hear like it's never too early to go to your career services or go to your career center. Any advice for advisors to help with their students in terms of like when they talk with their students about this is maybe what you should do like each year that you're on the campus, or what service you should use? Any advice with that?
Yes, for sure. I am also a part of, big fan of NACADA, and we do have a career advising group in NACADA, and we talk about that. How do we embed individual career conversations, or sort of that design of career conversations in campus environments? So sort of creating the culture, because academic advising and career conversations can really support, and I think in value, there's value in having those hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, George Steele has done a lot of work on flipped advising, and we've talked a little bit. And actually, George is doing a podcast for the career advising group in March. I shouldn't say podcast; it's just an online conversation. So let's rephrase that, because we can't call it a podcast, but an online conversation about that and how to incorporate those two things together. And networking those opportunities, or how to ask the right questions, ask the big questions. So, how does this fit with your experience? Or, when you think about your career options, what factors seem most important to you? Or, what traits are reflected in your response, or in your classroom? What are some of the things that other people experience about you? I mean, those are just different types of questions an academic advisor could incorporate into their advising. What career paths will best allow you to be who you are? I mean, even something like that gives students, or the agency, to have that conversation in their advising appointment.
Good advice. And maybe we can transition it to maybe even with NACADA members or advising professionals, in the sense that, you work with both students and alumni. And do you have any tips for NACADA members or advising professionals in general with networking, whether it's online or at a conference? Because we hear that a lot, right? Like, go network. And some might think like, I'm too nervous to go up to someone, or I don't even know how to even start that conversation, or what should I say? What should I ask? What's the first step? And any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So how I got into NACADA actually was when I became the director of academic advising at my former institution. And that was actually really a sense of, organizations, not all organizations have career ladders where you become, an assistant, an associate, a director, a senior director. Larger institutions might have that. Smaller institutions can often be really flat, right? Like, this is the role. And until someone retires or leaves, that's the role you're in. And small schools a lot of times are in that sort of confined structure. And the director of academic advising at the time was retiring. And so my boss, who's actually become, a mentor to me, I still talk with him and visit him. He comes to my office even now, even though he's long since retired. Glenn said to me, well, this could be your one chance to, if you want that director title or role, to do it. And I think I see a lot of connection between career. I was a career counselor at the time, to academic advising. So applied for it, that role, though, I didn't really know a lot about academic advising. I knew a lot about higher ed, or about student development theories and career development theories, but not necessarily about advising. So first thing I did was I reached out to Morrow Reynolds, who actually was a member of NACADA for a long time, was the director of academic advising at an institution close to Hope College. She was at Hope College, and close to where I am. And she was so gracious about meeting me. She invited me to come to their offices. And I think my advice to anybody would be just ask. Just pick up the phone, send an email, reach out. Maybe a person might not have the time or the space to do what Maura did and invite me to come to meet. But everyone has in today's landscape a phone call, a quick chat, a quick Zoom. Just even that is super helpful. I also think, we all might not have the budgets to get to conferences. So anything that you could do locally, whether it's connecting with individuals from other local institutions and creating your own sort of coffee conversation or just career conversation, has been helpful for us. We work a lot with our regional area schools, and it's great to pick up the phone or just send an email like, are you all, this is something we're dealing with. NACADA has some great listservs. So being a member of NACADA, I think, is instrumental to just then utilize those listservs to say, hey, this is happening at our institution. What are you all experiencing, and any advice? And I think that people are very willing to offer their own thoughts and insights if you just put it out there.
Yeah, and I agree with those listservs. Like you'll see someone will say, "Hey, I have this question. I'm working on this project, or I just got tasked with this initiative." And it's almost just immediate. You start seeing responses about, "Well, at our institution, here's what we do, and we've done X, Y, and Z. Let me know if you have any questions." And it's very much a lot of people are willing to share.
I think if we're in the field of supporting students and supporting student success, then the information isn't proprietary information, right? Like, I want Aquinas College students to be successful, to graduate, to go on to live fulfilled lives. I also want, University of California students to go on and be successful and graduate and live fulfilled lives. And so in that sense, whether it is a new program initiative or something that we're doing, it's my opinion to be shared, right? So we in the end all want the same thing. We want students to find a place of belonging. We want them to be successful, and we want that to then carry on and contribute to the greater good of society. So in the end, we are all working towards the same goal.
Yeah, 1000% agree. Now, you've talked a little bit about how you got involved with NACADA, a couple of things that you've done. Can you talk more about other things that you've done within NACADA, and also how that connects to how you got involved in the Emerging Leaders Program?
Sure. So Maura Reynolds, as I mentioned, was actually the chair of the Small Colleges and Universities Advising Community. So that was a community that really I found my people when I went to NACADA. I mean, as a person who is representing a small college, you're oftentimes going to a national conference by yourself, right? They only maybe send one or two people, if that. So and I am a very extroverted individual by nature. So, but I have individuals in my family who are not. The book Quiet is a great book. I have referenced it many times in my own personal life because sometimes I don't understand when my twin boys might say something to me. I'm like, why don't you just go ask them? So I definitely want to say that and get that out there, because I want to make sure that individuals don't listen to this and are like, well, that person just, So that being said, small colleges don't have this group that are attending maybe large events. So I had to find my people to have lunch with, people to have, conversations with about sessions. And the Small College and Universities group, I went to one of their business meetings and I met people, and, it was advice that Maura had given me, like, this is a great group to be a part of. So listening to her advice, I went, and then I got involved, and then I became the chair of the Small College and Universities, and then tapped other people to think about leadership roles. And then that just basically snowballed into getting involved. So once you sort of put yourself out there, find that one place that you are connected to, whether by interest area or by population, then make sure to take the time to, step out of that comfort zone. And that's where change occurs, right? Change occurs outside of your comfort zone.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, it was one where I got involved with some of the advising communities of the ones that I connected with because of the work I do at my institution. And then from there, kind of explored, okay, these are some of my other interests in advising that also NACADA has that I may not directly do in my position, but I'm really interested in. You get to meet all these new people, which I think is really great.
Yeah. And then listen, so one of my now, I would say, friends, Shannon Burton, was on the board of NACADA MSU. So oftentimes I would tag on, that's like an hour away from where I live. So tag on to my large school friends to, ride share or share rooms when costs are an issue. And it was great to have individuals to also say, have you thought about the community on philosophy, history, and theory? I think you'd get a lot out of that. And I hadn't, but attending those that might not exactly fit that niche of yours also led to huge self-discoveries, knowledge, insights, and also meeting amazing people.
Yeah, and then end up being like friends and in a way kind of family as well.
Mhm.
And so in one of those other things you've done within NACADA is being part of the Emerging Leaders Program. And we've had many guests on who've been part of ELP, whether they've been an emerging leader or they've been a mentor. And I think it's a fantastic program. I've gone through the program as well. And if you're listening to this in January or later on in February, the beginning of March, applications are still being accepted for this program. But I guess for you, in your own words, how would you describe the Emerging Leaders Program?
Mhm. It was a phenomenal experience. And I was never a mentee in the Emerging Leaders Program, but not that I didn't want to be, but I at the point in my career, I was asked, have you considered being a part of the mentor side? And I would say that whether you apply to be a mentor or apply to be a mentee, you're both learning from each other. So I want to say that right off the bat, that I got as much out of the experience, or even more so out of the experience. I think the Emerging Leaders Program is really an opportunity to encourage members, NACADA members, to get involved in opportunities within the institution. And of course, like the especially getting diverse groups of individuals who might not have had the Maura Reynolds or the Shannon Burtons that I just mentioned, in their backyards involved. So applying for that, in kind of taking the time, helps to develop maybe skills and tools necessary to pursue elected positions or encourage or assist members of, populations who might be underrepresented in the association's leadership to attend state or regional annual conferences, because there is a little bit of a financial assistance for the mentees to be a part of, towards expenses related to attending the events, which is wonderful. And I think the conversations really are meant to go where the mentee wants them to go. So whether it's, for me, so I was paired actually with someone who is at Michigan State. We didn't know each other. We thought we would have a lot more opportunities to have in person. We will at one point in time, but we only met once in person outside of the conferences before, COVID happened. And so Danielle Lopez and I, met throughout the course of the official ELP program. And we talked about personal goals of Danielle's within NACADA, as well as personal goals or professional goals within her, career, both working parents, so creating that supportive listening ear as navigating all of those challenges, having had the opportunity to also say, I get that. I've, experienced that too. Fun fact, I don't think it was known at the time of the pairing, but we're both the moms of all boys. So that was a fun thing to have in common. We didn't know about, right? Its own little world. So, for my mentee, it was just exciting to hear the journey. And I felt blessed to just help her navigate. Well, here's these options that I can get involved with. This is what I'm thinking, asking those curious questions, right? Being more, curious and listening more and kind of talking about, having her talk a little bit about what she sees as her future. So it was definitely a two-way, though, conversation, because I would also share my challenges as well. Well, here's what I'm thinking, or I'm challenged right now with. What do you think? And so we helped each other as much. It's not a one-way street at all, the ELP program. So I would say for anybody listening who is a NACADA, first become a NACADA member, and then think about looking into applying to be an emerging leader.
Yeah. And I think people listening right now are probably like, that actually sounds really nice. And I'd really like to be a part of it. So it's good that you're mentioning that, like, if someone is thinking, oh, I would want to be a mentor, but I was never in the Emerging Leaders Program, that's fine. You don't have to have already been in the program to be a mentor. And then anyone that wants to think about being an emerging leader, also, we use leader and mentee interchangeably here. They do get some sort of incentive to be able to attend like conferences. But then also, I think one of the misconceptions when someone hears the term leader, they might think, oh, it's only if I want to be like a president or some elected position. But NACADA actually looks at the leader definition in very broad terms, correct?
Holistically, right? You can be a leader and not have to be a executive board member, right? A leader is someone who might be a prolific writer. So perhaps there's an individual out there that is, I really have a lot of things that I want to say, and I want to write and improve my craft in that way. And pairing with somebody who is a member of NACADA who might be able to then read or provide maybe connections, right? Individuals that might be able to connect with, whether it's the NACADA Journal or Advising Today or whatever publication that we offer, those sorts of things. I think that was one of the goals. Danielle was working on her PhD while we were in the crux of the mentor-mentee relationship, and we still talk now, even though officially our connection has ended according to NACADA. It never ends. That relationship doesn't just disappear, right? And so through that period, we make connections in certain ways as far as being so writing would be another area, or even just if you want to focus more regionally or statewide. I know one of your most recent podcasts was with Chris talking about regional conferences, right? So those are also great ways to get involved and to be, maybe it's presenting some you at a local or regional or annual conference. And all of those things, I think, are super valuable. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for the ELP is just having someone that you can ask questions in a safe space. Right. And also networking. I don't want to use the word networking in a sort of, I don't know, who do you know way, but in networking in the sense of, have you talked to, if you're working with somebody, I think for me, one of the biggest values is when someone says to me, so I try to do it to others, is what you're saying sounds really interesting. Have you talked to Matt? You should talk to Matt, because Matt is doing exceptional work in this area, and let me introduce you. And If I can make that email introduction, I think that is a good start. Then you have to take it from there, but you just need that individual to help you. I read a book once. You don't need a mentor, you need a sponsor. And
Okay.
it's a great little book. We use it I use a chapter about it in our class. And the whole of it was, mentoring is great because it's listening and it's hearing what, and having that sounding board, that person to be supportive. But the sponsor in your career journey is the individual who does just that, says, have you talked to this person? Let me connect you. And making those connections are super valuable.
Oh yeah, it reminds me when I was in the program and Leah Panganiban, who's my mentor, and yeah, definitely even after we graduated, in a sense, we still are in connection with one another and working together on various projects still. But yeah, when Leah would say, "Hey, what do you think about what are your goals for this year?" And it would be like, "Okay, I want to think about this or this or this," and then in her mind, she's already thinking, "Okay, well, you can talk with this person, or actually this would go to this advising community, so you might want to reach out to this person." So it really gave me like a path, so I didn't feel like I was lost. But yes, once you have that information, then it is kind of on the leader mentee to, okay, now that you have this information, take it from there and run with it. And for anyone that is interested, they might be thinking, okay, this is still sounding good. What are the expectations while they're in the program? Because I know, like on the website, it says like 2, or like how Lee Cunningham will say 2.5 years because there's like pre-work you got to do. But what are some of those expectations for, I guess, for both a leader and a mentor?
Yeah. So the expectations, willing to attend those monthly online meetings. NACADA, huge shout out to NACADA again, because Zoom and Zoom meetings were a thing before it became a thing, right? I always, Lee Cunningham, I mean, God bless her, like I remember being on the advising communities. We were already doing Zoom meetings. And so some of my colleagues were like, what's the Zoom thing? How do you work it? I'm like, oh yeah, NACADA taught me how to do that a long time ago. So we do things in that virtual way. So Zoom meetings, attending the orientation sessions, as you mentioned, attending the annual conference. But then the other things are kind of up between the two individuals. So for individuals, that how we structured it could be a structured Zoom meeting. And then if there was something quick that came up, a little text or a little, chat or something like that, if something exciting happened, or even if something it wasn't exciting, but you just wanted to share. And then that sort of structured meetings were to help keep Danielle, in this case, like along her goal. So what ELP program will ask for, what are your personal goals for the year as related to NACADA? So it could be, I want to present at a regional or annual conference. I want to be a member of an advising community, or get onto a different community board position, or whatever it is. I want to write, I want to publish something, whatever it is your personal goal. Those meetings were to help sort of stay on path for those goals.
Okay, nice. And of course, it's up to with between the mentor and the emerging leader, how that schedule might work. Because it might even be like, hey, we'll just call each other on the phone, or text each other, or send an email, and we're good.
Right. As it could be as structured or as infrequent or flexible as those two individuals. It's not prescribed.
Yeah. So what's the application process look like when someone's trying to apply for this program?
Yeah. So to apply for the program, obviously becoming a member of NACADA, as we mentioned, you basically should have at least, I think, 2 years. This is for the mentees. So at least 2 years of being a part of NACADA as a member, demonstrated sort of some involvement in the association. But I think by that, it's just engaging in, it's not being a leader, of course, in the program, but just actively maybe attending regional or annual conferences. must be able to articulate the goals of increasing your NACADA leadership and how that might be a part of the program in the future, or how you think that being a part of it is going to help you in NACADA. I mean, we want to have a diverse representation of leaders within NACADA. So I think the end goal, whether it is in different paths, whether it's writing or whether it's a leadership roles on the board, or whatever it is, individuals need to kind of articulate how their participation in the program will support NACADA's leadership in those diverse areas that we mentioned in the future. And then, agreeing to that 2-year period, or the total of 2.5 years, as you said, which includes the preparatory work, and then also that sort of leader mentor pairing, connections. So which occur usually at the annual meetings.
Yeah. And just because, you've gone through the program, I've gone through the program, you as a mentor, me as an emerging leader, like someone might be listening, like, okay, maybe it sounded like a lie. It really, in a way, it's not, because when you kind of spread it out over that 2.5 years, it's like little homework assignments in a way, some of the time.
It's not a lot. And honestly, we looked back, Danielle and I looked back, and we met, 25 times over the course of the program. But I feel like we could have done more, right? Yeah. I mean, we met everything that we needed to do, but yet I so enjoyed talking with her that it wasn't a lot. It really wasn't. And it was all the stuff that one was going to be doing anyway, but in a way giving you agency and encouragement and support, and maybe also, like you said, paths, helping to clear a little bit of paths too, or at least to provide what direction the path needed to go to make it a little easier too.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say I was able to balance it, balance my work. And I'm sure like every month it almost seems like you get increased workloads and other priorities, but I was still able to balance my job at my institution along with the Emerging Leaders Program. Because to me, it went hand in hand. And so definitely, if you're listening, really think about it. And I guess with that, one question that might come up from people, and I know I had to ask my boss this too, is how do I justify this to my supervisor? When we're thinking like, is this going to take you away from your job? Really it's not. But any suggestions in your opinion on how someone could approach their supervisor with wanting to apply for this program?
It's a really great question, because it comes up right in everyday life. I think I always circle back to what value will it bring to the department, to the organization as a whole. So thinking about being a part of a board or a program like the Emerging Leaders Program, I would say that the lessons learned about who you are and your own personal strengths, but also having the network of individuals to also learn a little bit about best practices, or about what other institutions are doing, having a cohort of individuals, because it's not just the mentor-mentee relationship. You also have this whole cohort of individuals that you then are almost like family with, right? You are meeting in a large group as well. So even if, I'm doing some work with Billy Seifert, we were not paired, but we have a lot of the same passions and interests. And I think that that's an example of the opportunity to bring back knowledge to your own institution is really valuable. And hopefully that kind of resonates with supervisors. So I have a colleague that is on a local board, so different but similar scenario. And one of the things that when Bridget brought this to me was like, this will be really good for contacts in the community engagement, so bringing those sorts of, here's my 3 things like that, I think will be added value to our department.
Yeah. And so if anyone's listening that you're struggling with how do I approach my supervisor, I would just say take this little segment right now and then play that to your supervisor, and then it'll list everything in terms of all the good points of why you should be able to apply and how you'll still definitely be able to handle both your job and what you do in the Emerging Leaders Program. So I guess following that is, when's the deadline to apply and what happens after that?
Yeah. Okay, I have to look, but isn't it like March? So March, maybe mid-March, March 15th, 2022. So you could start writing stuff now and then get it in. Because I do think you need, it's a little bit of work, right? You have to get a recommendation or some sorts of references to apply. So I would say do it now, maybe over winter break even. Just get it all geared up and ready to go. And then I think that the application period, January to March, and then the kickoff would be at the Portland, Oregon conference. So that would be in October of 2022. And I think that what they have discovered is that, the pandemic has in so many ways changed a lot of our work structures. One of which is we used to have this sort of speed round. You probably did that too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that speed round where we went and chatted with people in a room and then they did the pairing. And I think now it's going to still be what they learned is that the actual doing it ahead of time in more virtual format was so much more valuable. So the pairings will occur in the summer leading up to the conference.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah. That would be my phone, actually my Apple Watch. So
hey, it's technology. That's how. Funny story with that. So sometimes I'll be talking to someone on FaceTime, and they'll be on their side. They're like, hey Siri, blah 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 blah, and then my phone's like, say that again.
Yeah, that was just that. I don't even have my phone here, but I forgot I have a watch. Dang it.
Oh, it's great to end on a funny note and something unexpected, but you roll with it, right? So
again, seatbelt, buckle in. You never know what you're going to expect.
Oh yeah, and I'm not editing this part out. This is going on the podcast.
Well, this is me. This is really who I am. I, have lots of little foibles in life, and that's just.
But we'll for sure include the link to the Emerging Leaders Program website in the show notes. So, really take a look at it. Definitely think about applying. But like you're saying, it's some of the questions that you get asked with the application. Really start thinking about how you're going to answer those. Because it's personal to you, and you want to be able to explain that for the individuals that end up reading your application to decide if they accept you or not into the program. But
they do such a great job with reading and then pairing. I look back at our cohort and I think those pairings were amazing. They did such a nice job. And I mentioned Shannon Burton. Well, her mentee was Drew Purdaway. Anyway, Purdaway, yes. Yeah. And those two, theory talk, crazy, and look at what both of them have gone and done. And again, so they have a really great system in NACADA, if I could say that the Emerging Leader Program matches are exceptional.
Oh, yeah. Another thing I agree with, and people are going to be like, you've agreed with everything that Dana said. It's true. It is true. But we've reached time for the podcast recording. And so I appreciate you being on again to get to know you a little bit better and also just promoting the Emerging Leaders Program. Again, we wouldn't be talking about it unless it really does make a difference. And it does. So really think about applying. And if anyone has any questions, whether it's about, career services or it's about Emerging Leaders Program or getting involved, how can they reach out to you?
Well, I do have a email information on our website, so they can find me on aquinas.edu, and feel free to reach out, or LinkedIn. Send me a message via LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect. So whether it's through my aquinas.edu email or LinkedIn message, send me a note and I'd be happy to connect.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It's been such a joy to talk with you, Matt.
Oh, same here. Same here.